tasks and things that we need to do. And then you'll have an hour talking with someone that's an expert on that subject for that given day. Have you guys already looked through what's on the calendar and the agents that are going to be speaking? All right. So I would encourage you, but
It's too small to read.
it's my peanut gallery over here. I'm going to just focus right here.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
You promise?
no, keep long.
So there was also manuals distributed, usually in PDF format that you should have. So if you've downloaded the manual so you can follow along on that, please do. So here's what the Ignite calendar looks like generically. Now, the reality is this isn't exactly how we're going to be hitting it, but it's just setting some expectations as far as how much time you're putting towards your activities. I've had this conversation countless times with agents coming into the industry, and we need to really understand our time blocks as far as what we're committed to and what we're going to be able to do. As you get busier and busier, it's easier to get more complicated or mixed up, and having a set time block is crucial. So the idea would be is that we will be meeting from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday, but then from 11 to 5 or whatever hours you have outlined, we would be completing the activities that we need to do to be successful real estate agents. And this day is the first day to really dive into what we're going to be filling that time block with. So it's working. So here is the Ignite plan, the real estate expert, lead generation, lead follow-up, and transaction. When I look at this, it sounds a lot like the 4 pillars, the 4 laws of lead generation. In order to be a successful real estate agent, every successful real estate agent out there does 4 things. They have a database, they consistently add to it, they consistently communicate with it, and they follow up on all the leads that come out of it. One of the issues that we see on the NAR reports every single year, and does everybody know what I talk about when I say the NAR reports? But the reports they put out annually, they usually come out towards the end of January and February. And it's a look back at the data of real estate agents. One thing that we see is 90+% of clients would gladly work with the real estate agent that they previously worked with, or they would work with the real estate agent that was, previously their parents or their friend's realtor, if they had stayed in touch. But the reality is they only end up working with them about 50% of the time because those agents haven't kept in communication. So that last part there, follow up on all the leads that come your way, is one of the most important things that I think agents miss out on, is there's so much lost business from just not staying in communication. We're going to talk about database, we're going to talk about CRM, we're going to talk about technology.
How do we see that report? Do we just go to NAR?
So there's 2 places you can actually see that report. So you can go to NAR and you can download that report directly, or those numbers are included in the state of the company vision speech from Family Reunion. So that's part of the opportunity. Maybe one of the study or education hacks was going to Family Reunion is they put that in front of you. So by being there, you digest that information. I got to sit next to Lydia in the audience as Gary Keller went through his expansive, and Johanna was there as well. And he went through his expansive report on everything, but he includes in that those NAR numbers to really give us the detail about that. So can anybody commiserate with talking to a family member, a friend, a client, only to find out they just transacted 30 days ago, 60 days?
Yeah.
I've seen what? How many people? So Lydia, Kelly, you've had it happen to you, Sandy? Anybody else? You're shaking your head too, yes. So almost half the room is already understanding that that's something that we miss out on. So just understand that when we look at this, we're remembering that a big part of being a real estate agent is just being consistent and staying in relationship with our client. There's a bunch of different ways to kind of anchor this thought. And I take this from Bold. Bold talks about anchoring things into a single phrase. That's why you have so many bold laws. Does anybody know any bold laws?
Oh,
No pressure, no diamond.
if it's not on my schedule, it doesn't exist.
Yes, that's time blocking. So those are different phrases, and there's 40 plus bold laws now that all just anchor something. They really just help you keep that front of mind in just a few simple words. We're going to be through this, making sure that we have the anchors to really keep ourselves on top of what we need to be doing. Just more and more accountability. Okay, so the course overview. So today we're going to go through Spark Your Career. Then we'll go through Embrace Your Job, Connect Your Market, and Define Your Value. Those are the next few days that we'll be going through. And you see, then we'll jump into lead generation, we follow up, and then transaction. Today's agenda, we'll be working through this today. I'm trying to work on the timing and the pace. It's always exciting. But thinking a new way of thinking, then we'll go into culture, KW value, and MC value. That's market center value. KW resources, which is immense. Your career vision, which is something that we all need to have a passion to drive ourselves through what we're going to be achieving for our business. And then daily success systems, getting into time blocking, and then recap and ahas. Anyone can do it. Not everyone will you? So again, hey, good morning. This is another sort of anchor for me in a lot of ways. If you spent enough time around KW literature and education, this is a quote that comes out of the front of Shift. Also the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, but I really think about Shift on this one because I'm reading that book as we go into a market transition. It also shows up in the one thing as well. But there's something that we need to acknowledge is time on task. If you put in the time, you will see the results. As long as you're being accountable, you're following systems and models, that is the key to real estate success. Is there any doubt to that? This is an open forum. You guys can talk as much as you want. If you have any questions, or if I say something that you have a question about, please stop and stop me, and I'll go into further detail. Can you repeat everything you said so far? Yes.
You go back to the last slide, so I can finish writing it down because my 1.2 is different than your 1.2. Thank you. While you talk.
Let me actually catch up on my notes.
That's because his is page 12 and not 1.2.
I know.
Oh.
This is totally different.
Dang. They printed out.
So this quote is from one of Gary Keller and his team's published books. Gary Keller is the co-founder and executive chairman of KWS and Keller Williams Realty, and one of the most influential people in the world of real estate. The quote expresses some of that's so true about real estate, something that's so true about real estate. Real estate is a wonderful business and one where you can make a lot of money, run your own successful enterprise, achieve your biggest dreams. And as the quote says, anyone can do it. Not everyone will you? This brings to mind Ben Kinney. If you guys haven't heard his story, you don't have to study it. But Ben Kinney was a door-to-door cable salesman. And he came across real estate and got inducted to Keller Williams. And after about 3 years, he grew from just a guy that was making just a bit more than minimum wage going door to door, and then built a real estate empire that was worth more than 2.3 billion in just mind-numbing few short years. And then now, if you look at where Ben Kinney's at over the past decade and a half with Keller Williams, he is the co-founder or is the founder of Rivety, which is a CRM product that he sells. He also manages a big majority of the real estate that happens in the Northwest, largely around Bellingham, Washington. But again, he didn't have a huge financial foundation to build off of. He didn't come from a real estate family. He didn't come from an Ivy League school. He just really focused on time on task. And that was really the way that he saw it, is that I heard that I just need to stay in activity. I need to be doing lead generation. I need to make sure that I'm doing the 4 laws of lead generation database. So he would go out, door knock, enter in everything into his database that day. He would focus on always making sure that he was adding the right number of contacts for his growth plan, always making sure that his database was growing in size. And then he would always put them into some sort of systematic follow-up, a smart plan, a campaign. And that's something that I really love about this conversation, Ignite, is how many of you have a way to automatically put someone to a smart plan the moment after you meet them? You all do?
Maggie's book.
What?
We need Maggie's book.
You need Maggie's book.
Isn't that the name of the lady, Kathleen's book or something that every time she meets somebody, she writes something in it?
Mhm.
That's what she looks through all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but are we doing it?
We have the means,
Yeah,
just don't do
I
it.
did, when I was at, the last theater presentation at Lamp, I met two different women, stuck them right in, I said, well, we were just chatting, I said, well, can I get your information? And it was the first time I was, had been bold enough to go out and ask for it. Usually I talk to people and I just, nice to meet you, and then I walk away and I'm 3 aisles away in the grocery store and go, that was stupid. Why don't you ask her name, even if she just liked my haircut, for God's sakes, you know?
I think technology is fundamentally changing the way that we engage and the way that we even think about those engagements. Because what's changed over the past couple of years, specifically with the launch of the Command app, is now even in the grocery store, I feel the habit to, after I meet someone, to just kind of sneak away and enter in their information into my CRM. So I don't have to keep it up here. I don't have to keep top of mind. I don't have to keep it in a Post-it note. And it just happens. The secret to the way that the industry is changing, though, is having it preset so that I'm not just entering Angela's information into my CRM in the cereal aisle. The next thing I do is that I add a smart plan to it. So she actually starts getting an email notification or a text message or some sort of contact before I even leave the store. And then the CRM tells me the next weekday in business hours to actually follow up and give Angela a call. That's the difference that's really it's transforming our industry. It's changing us from the blockbusters to Netflix and the way that we're able to engage and have really one-to-one relationships with lots more people. Because the amount of business that you do is going to always be in proportion the amount of people that think of real estate or think of you when they think of real estate. Sorry, I mixed up the words. Okay, so here's today's agenda. We're going to work through this. Please ask questions. And we're going to start with the 6 personal perspectives. Has anybody had this come across their thing? No? Your plate. Have you seen the 6 personal perspectives? I know Sandy has.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, you should have been emailed PDF from Jessica.
It looks a little different. I'm not seeing the same thing you're seeing.
You're not?
Yeah, it's page 1.3, actually.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, yeah.
Well-
I think I got it. 1.3 on the PDF. Thank you.
So what I was really wondering is if anybody's been introduced to the 6 personal perspectives. Again, this is a long time part of KW training. I've been through this a number of times, and I really appreciate what they're trying to break down in 6 simple concepts. Understanding that every successful business really fall under these principles. These principles are being enacted in your business on a regular day or on a regular cycle. You guys are taking this into account and making your decisions and really casting the vision for what your business is going to be. But committing to self-mastery is to know your goals, know your strengths and weaknesses, and know how to work with both strengths and weaknesses to seek and master the necessary knowledge, skills, and habits to reach your goals. How many people know their goals? Does anybody want to share their goals? Yeah.
I think I just created a goal just now, but I think I need to work on a smaller scale. It's just with the whole database thing. I didn't know that we can, I guess I have to dive deep and figure out how to do that, but how where it just automatically will send stuff over, like you said, it'll do it before you get home. You know, like if you enter their information on command on the database, and we'll the smart.
Just so everybody knows, everybody in the room, real quick, Janine was the one question I was making sure, but we've got Kelly here in the front row. I encourage more people to move to the front row. Susan. Showered this morning, it's scary. Janine, Johanna, Marseille, Lydia, and then Nazrin, Beverly, Kyle, Sandy, that guy, and Dominic. And that guy is Misha Ellis. If you haven't met him, there you go. I've known him for more than a decade and I still never found him. But it's important that we share these things. So that's a great question. And that's one question that oftentimes I think agents shy away from. We've gone through the conversation about engaging with technology, and oftentimes it's intimidating, and due to the intimidation or being in a group setting, we're too nervous just to stand up and say, hey, I didn't realize that's something I need to know more about. Where can I find more resources? So as you saw on the agenda today, we're going to go through the resources section and we'll tap into those resources there. But please don't hesitate to ask more questions. We will get to the app and see a picture of the app on the screen.
I have a comment.
Yes, Beverly.
I've been here about 6 months, and I know we've got some new agents. It's gotten to me, honestly, to about now, to start to feel like I got a handle on it. I'm not saying I'm successful yet, but I feel like I've got a handle on what I need to do for me right now. Because the first 4 months, I had this spinning, and this is so much information. And I've actually started some smart plans with a couple of people that I've been working with. But now I'm like, I should have done this a while ago, you know, but I was just pretty much overwhelmed with the amount of material, and one of my goals is to actually bring value to me myself. I'm learning a lot, so when I meet with someone, my big goal is just trying to get value of what I can bring to them as a service, and I'm getting there, so that's why I'm here today as well. So, but it's just appreciate that it is, in my experience, has been a real learning curve. And for me to try to find out, okay, what do I need to do today as opposed to 100 things I could be doing today. And I'm finally starting to kind of get a handle on that, but it needs a lot of.
I can ditto that because there's so much information between trying to figure out command, understand Gary's philosophy and get into it and really dive into it and take the courses, understand where you're going. I think command has probably been the most overwhelming thing to understand. It should, yeah. And then, you know, learning all the other stuff. And then, I mean, because where I was before, they didn't talk about anything like anything done here at all. And so it took, after a year and a half with someplace else or a year with someplace else, it took me almost 7 months to kind of go, okay. Yeah. I'm a little stronger on my vision now. You know, I've done some of the stuff, but I don't think I've been as productive as I should have been. I felt like I was floundering the first 6-7 months.
So let's take a moment, and I'm looking for suggestions because I don't have anything up here. But who do you see as a incredible success? Who was a prodigy in your mind? Who was someone that went from jumping into a venture, it doesn't have to be real estate, and was just a rock star overnight? Does anybody have any examples of that, or who you idealize? All right, Beverly.
I have a son of a friend of mine who started at a stock company. And he has a $5 million customer facility. He started as a child working for his parents, did some marketing company, and he learned how to do all the back stuff. He's gone from, 28-year-old.
Just phenomenal success.
Phenomenal success.
And can we put a name to the person just so we
His name
can?
is Eric.
Eric. Eric who?
Gupta.
Oh, I know that name.
He lives locally.
I think I've heard him on a couple podcasts actually.
Oh, really?
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I would be almost certain that Eric went through times of vulnerability where, and maybe in your engagement and getting to know Eric, you would see that he's much more gregarious, much more willing to ask questions, much more willing to put himself out there, and seems somewhat fearless, maybe in your eyes, in his willingness to be vulnerable. Does anybody else have any other Well, we need like one more at least. Johanna.
I was listening to a podcast this morning and it was the story of, the woman who started It Cosmetics. And she was a waitress and she was an on-air reporter. That was her dream job. She started having skin problems with rosacea and it was interfering with her job. So she, this condensed version, she decided to leave her job, take all of her savings and try to figure out cosmetic formula that she could use because she thought if she had this problem, other people have the problem as well. Anyway, it ended up getting bought by L'Oreal Cosmetics. And she became the first or one of the few women CEOs of L'Oreal, but she was not L'Oreal. Anyway, just, you know, she Denny's to on-air news reporter to all in, put her job, everything. She just had to make a commitment.
So what do you guys hear in that story? I hear commitment,
Commitment,
vulnerability,
risk.
taking risks.
Risk, big risk.
Calculated risk.
Yeah.
It's not like she decided just to give up everything. It sounds like she had a plan, but she left her job, and I'm assuming that wasn't done on the moment. It was something that she prepared for, or no?
She didn't have a lot of savings. She didn't know anything about the cosmetics industry and just decided to start researching and through a lot of kind of grit, she started just cold calling manufacturers or cosmetic companies asking who manufactures your products, and most of them would hang up on her. And eventually she got a crack in the door, an opening, and then she just went in all over for that.
So that sounds a lot like lead generation. Eventually, she got a crack after making a lot of calls, a lot of rejections. But it requires our ability to be somewhat vulnerable and willing to know that we've got maybe 99 no's in front of us today, but that one yes will change our lives. Now, the other thing that I really want to acknowledge, what I see in the patterns of growth and success in agents, is the ability to also be vulnerable with your peers. For the agents that have been here for a while, or those that were at the award ceremony over this weekend, which was a blast, thank you guys for coming out. You saw some of our top teams up there. Who were the top agents that you saw walk across the stage? Who represents the business that you want to build? So does anybody have anybody that stands out to them?
Well, Dan.
Dan?
He's done a lot on his own.
Which Dan? Dan Christensen or Dan Anderson?
Anderson.
Do you hear that?
He's got the door shut.
He's lead generating. Yeah, he's diving into it. This is true for Dan as well, but I also think about some of the agents that I've watched grow through this office. Dan Christensen, Kevin Dubley, Ed Ornstein, who have been long-standing pillars in the real estate community, not just in this office, but just around the community. But one thing that group has done consistently for years is a mastermind. You're familiar with it, right? And it's those three plus Chris and Ophia. And that bond and the conversations they have consistently is a sense of vulnerability they're willing to put out there. They're talking about where the pitfalls they're facing, but they're having peers share with them and build on that. That, if not anything, that's one of the basis for KW's growth, KW's philosophy, KW's culture. We want a community of like-minded agents that are open to suggestion and conversation and learn from their peers. We're trying to stand on the shoulders of our fellow giants. And that is something that we all have access to. It's just something that humanly, naturally, in the privacy of our own homes, we're terrified. Anybody? We did a KJ sit down, me and Marseille, and it blew my mind how much there is to you that nobody knows. I'm not going to spill any secrets here, but that's part of it. We have to be willing to be emotional, because I'm certain that Eric isn't concerned about getting emotional. Eric is concerned about not striving and hitting the goals. And he's willing to put that emotion aside. He's willing to stand up in front of a group of people and say, these are the problems that I'm running to, or this is what I need a solution for. So I'm lingering a little bit on this, but this really comes into committing to self-mastery. Oh, I forgot it's dictating what I say. I hope it's not copying all of it. I believe that committing to self-mastery, you can't do it in a vacuum. You have to have your peers' perspectives. And if we're not willing to make those relationships, if we're not willing to have those conversations, we're missing out on 80% of what we bring to the table in this office, what we try and drive through community culture. So I hope you guys take that to heart. 80-20 principle. So this comes from Pareto principle. There was a study done in Italy about 300 years ago where they found that 20% of the population owned and controlled 80% of the property and the assets. And then consistently, mathematically, you can find this happen in a lot of different areas. You hear this on the news all the time when we talk about 1%ers, but you do find that 20% of the population controls 80% of the wealth. And you can 80-20 that 80-20, not that 20%. You're going to find that 20% controls the vast majority of the 80% of that value. And you can do it over and over again until you get to Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and a few other people. But the 80-20 principle is something that shows up that we need to take into account and understand that 20% of your actions leads to 80% of your results. And that 20% action may show up in different ways. Going back to committing to self-mastery, 20% of the actions may be the willingness to actually form relationships and have conversations and do a weekly mastermind. 20% may be the willingness to commit 2 to 3 hours every single day to train yourself on the technology so you can get it to the level it needs to be. That 20% could be just reading the one thing and setting up a 66-day challenge to change your habits. Gary Keller has done this countless times, and not just Gary Keller, tons of people have done this over and over again, talking about the power of establishing new habits. And right now, what we're doing through Ignite is identifying the habits that we need to establish in ourselves, and then really using our 20% to making sure that happens before anything else. And I would bet for a lot of us right now, it is redeveloping the ways that we utilize technology, committing to that. Or it might be getting into the details of how to navigate mortgages. It's not a fun thing to really study and master, but I've given out the mortgage hack books countless times, and I've watched how many people have actually opened it up and read it. And it's the opposite end. It only gets opened about 20% of the people I send it to, and the other 80% just ignore it. But the reality is our ability to master that knowledge to navigate through transactions right now, reaching out to different mortgage brokers, credit unions, and asking them, what is the best rate, who's transacting, establishing relationships, and having those conversations so you can know who truly is the motivated lead market and how they can actually close a transaction. Going back to the second slide, anybody can do it. It's just will you. All right. Any questions? I'm assuming this is just really powerful. That's pretty much.
About that 80-20 principle. First of all, when I about business and we're talking all the time, but I was just also thinking about how that applies in personal life.
Oh, yes.
That 20% of the action or 20% of your behavior, what you put out there, the way you interact with someone close to you, gets you 80% of the results. So 20% of the time, you're a jerk. 80% of the time, that's what you're going to get back. Oh my God.
There's so many different lessons there. There's one teacher I was under that used a lot of foul words. But this isn't the way they said it. But for every fight, you have to have 5 hugs. They don't use the word fight in that presentation. But it's true. We know that people genuinely, and just think about ourselves, just accept the raw humanity that we're all people and realize that we prefer and trust people that we like and people that make us feel good. People remember how you make them feel far more than anything else. You don't remember the details of the conversation. You don't remember the lunch. You don't remember the food you ate. You just remember how you felt coming out of it. That's how Disney has been incredible, because they focus on feeling so deeply from a young age, brain that I haven't had to talk when I think of Disney, because we've had one fight, but for every fight, they give me 5 hugs. So it's something to really think about. And the 80-20 principle, and all of these are things that you can use to re-examine where you're at, where you're having an object or a hurdle or a speed bump in your business, your life, in your relationship, and analyze where am I at in that relationship. So you went through quantum leap, right?
Well, I just went to one of the breakout sessions and
Yes.
talked about it.
Yes. Quantum Leap, if you guys have the chance to take it, it's actually be coming up in April here in San Diego. Ashley Lunn will be teaching it, and I'm working with her to make sure that we can all get engaged. It should be at Mission Bay, and it'll be a minor cost. But I would love for you guys, if you're thinking, if you're resonating with Johannes, what she's talking about right now, Quantum Leap is huge on that, because it's really focusing beyond just the business. It's really talking about the whole. Because ultimately, regardless of how successful you are at business, no matter how much money you make, the one thing that grounds it for me, my anchor thought, is no amount of money is ever bought a second time. And after coming out of family reunion and the theme and the way that we're feeling in the world right now, it's really where we spend our time gives us our energy and makes us feel like that's life. That's the joy of living. That's the product that we want to create.
Is this quantum leap gonna be longer than just the 2 hours?
Yeah, it's
Right.
gonna be, I believe, a 4-hour course. It should
Yeah,
be.
it's curious for something else.
Yes.
Just kind of like spinning, and I've got the binder, in my entryway living room area, binder. I've got all my candy stuff out right there, and so find it. And I looked at that the other day, and when Dan and Deb had said they were gonna do the quantum leap thing, I'm thinking, how can you, since it was only like an hour and a half, and how do you get anything out of that? Because I remember when Brian was, his name?
Yeah.
It was so fast, I just kind of felt like I was left with just, it was like a downpour of rain.
Yeah.
And then it quit, and it's like, and then most of it just ran off, but it didn't get absorbed.
It's a lot. And I think the same thing that Beverly's been experiencing, as you expressed, is that coming into KW, it's a fire hose.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opportunity for overwhelm. I've been here for 10 years and I'm still overwhelmed. So it comes back down to just committing the time and trying to focus as best you can. But quantum leap in an hour and a half is nearly impossible to take it all in. But you grab the nuggets that really speak to you. So the next one, move from E to P. That's moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful. Yes.
I wanted to comment on your emails about the issues for mortgages. It's very, very important. The first 15 years I've done both real estate and mortgages. So now during the open house, when people come, they ask me questions and I tell them about what payment they're looking for or anything about financing. I said, okay, so 500,000, so your ENI is going to be 2,500, HUA going to be that's great. Like, how do you know all of that? So sometimes I have 4 people during the open house, and happened a couple of times. People say, "Can I work with you?" I mean, they have agents, and they think they don't know we have agents. They say, "Can you work with me? Can I work with you?" Yeah, and you don't need 15 years to do mortgages. You can take a couple of hours, buy a calculator, put down this, not put down, but the one that I use. I was like Chris. It'll take me a couple of hours to figure out how to calculate principal and interest and all of that, probably less than that. And you're going to be way above the because I know that I am. Not. I do.
Don't be humble. You're sure.
No, I mean, I already said it, so it's very, very important because it shows that you're an expert. That's why you think they want to work.
Competency.
Competency.
is a big reason people trust you.
Yeah.
They perceive you as competent. That is not.
Uh-huh.
So, yes, I know it's good. It's not an expert on the, I feel like it's so strong confidence in the app. Yeah, and it's just plug stuff in.
So there is a number of apps that can help you do it. I would still encourage you to hear Isha's words though. Is the app helps you expedite the process when you're a private person. And even through the KW Client app, there is a mortgage calculator there as well. But there's a difference between relying on the app to do the math and actually doing the calculation yourself, just so you can speak to it with confidence and also in front of you.
Wasn't that on our very first real estate exam test? I remember that.
Yeah.
That was. I had to do it in the class that day of the test.
Yeah.
To figure it out.
And so that brings us back to entrepreneur to purposeful. We get licensed, we go through 3 college level courses, take an exam, and then we're real estate agents. And that is entrepreneurial. Jumping in with both feet, going out and lead generating, that's entrepreneurial. But it's purposeful when you start really thinking through the fiduciary you're providing to the client, being able to intelligently and confidently speak to the mortgage rates. And the reason that mortgage rates are really pertinent right now is because that's a hot button issue. That's really around affordability, and that's what we're dealing with in this market right now, and will continue to deal with. As the market starts to change over the next few months, we might be finding more distressed homes. We might be learning about notice of defaults and people that are starting to be underwater or close to underwater in the home. And being able to intelligently talk to them about what is the liability they're facing and what is the severity of the decision that they need to make sooner than later. Because the reality is a notice of default looks much like a bankruptcy. If they get to that level where they're in default, they're not going to be able to apply for a mortgage for 7 years. So would you rather just sell the home, use the equity advances that you've made over the past few years, pay down that debt, rent for a little time, so you can still actually own a home again in the near future? That's a conversation that we need to be able to intelligently have with our clients that are in that situation, as I see that's a sector of the market that's coming out. It may not be your market. Again, we've got to make sure we balance our skills to the people who are generally in front of. So if we're working in the luxury world, that's a whole different world. If we're working in commercial, one thing that I'm super excited about for commercial right now is Prop 47 and knowing the details of what that has done as far as the redistribution of funds that were used against low-level drug crimes. Now that they've been decriminalized in California, that money has been moved more towards Medicaid. That means that now you have people that are supported by the states to be in recovery homes, and they can actually get paid a much larger percentage monthly for their accommodations, which then means if you are in commercial and multi-units, you can actually cash flow into properties rapidly. But it requires me to be in a relationship with a gentleman named Andrew Graham and coming to him honestly and saying, you're killing it with these what are they called? Sobriety homes. And he has turned it into this whole project where he knows the ins and outs of Prop 47. He's found the opportunity, but it's also about taking care of him. And he's authentic because he has a past with drugs and alcohol, and he saw it as an opportunity to get back. He feels proud about it. He feels like he's helping people heal and recover, and he's passionate about making really incredible recovery homes that people actually want to pay in, that people want to recover in. So I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but I want to really express this comes back down to that same anchoring of anybody can do it. It's just what you do. You can find a million ways to navigate this. Dan Christensen, one of the first Ignite trainings that he did in front of me, he said the words, you can think about real estate as football. There's a bunch of different ways to get the ball down the field. Not everybody's going to do it the same. You've just got to find the way that works for you. So that comes back to E to P. Entrepreneurial is purposeful. This is something that will resurface in our business over and over again. You don't just go through it once. You've got to break down and break down and break down. and then you've got to rebuild, and then find a new way forward. As the market changes, as the world changes, we're going to have to adapt, and we will have breakdowns through that. One thing that you can see, and this is something just from studying agents' businesses, that agents rarely go from just, you know, a 10% increase or a 20% increase in their business. The agents that really come through these types of shifts, they go from doing 20 units to 40 plus. And then when they make the next leap, they go from 40 plus to 100 plus. When people figure out how to get purposeful about what their opportunity is, the growth isn't just a small step forward, it's always exponential. See it really click and connect. So that's really what I would take from entrepreneur purposeful, and also understand the other great quote that I'm going to mess up for Bill Gates, is your biggest problem or complaint is your biggest learning opportunity. And instead of shying away from it, focusing on what that issue is what will turn your business into that exponential growth path. Number 4, make learning base the foundation of your action plan. So that ties directly into what I was saying about Bill Gates, essentially, is understanding that we have to educate ourselves through the obstacles that are in front of us at any given time, and just being grounded in that. Accepting that right now, a big part of, and I'll say it, I still have a ways to go learning the details of all the possibilities of technology we have in front of us. The app has blown me away with the ways that I can actually engage at a much higher level, participate without having to do all the footwork myself. But it's just a matter of really learning how to utilize the technology. And I'll tell you guys, the place that I'm at right now is that I've gone through the classes, I understand what the technology can do, but now I'm getting to the level where I need to get it creative to my own niche. And that is going to come from a lot of peer relationship conversation, really spitballing and brainstorming and perceiving and getting different perspectives of the ways that we can do things. Not being afraid to reach out to fellow agents and ask them how these things are happening and getting their perspective on it. Because the one quote, again, is another anchor for me, is that when it comes to perspective, by yourself, you can only gauge from your angle. But when you have a group of people that you regularly work with, communicate with, agents helping agents, AHA, something that we'll be talking about in every single session of Ignite. When you work with a group of people, you can see around corners. You can't do that on your own. You can only see what's in front of you. And that's part of where I feel the opportunity for my next step in growth technology is really getting in touch with more team leaders that are utilizing technology at a high level to get their insights. And the same thing applies to agents, finding other agents. That's why we love to pick on Dan so much. He's here. But if you're doing a farm, sit down and talk to Dan, ask the questions, because he's having great results. And Dan Anderson's behind the glass over there. Dan Christensen is another one. It's the culture and the attitude that he's engaged with his farm. The go-giver, I think, is one of the big things that I keep on coming back to, because he's really leveraged that, and having like-minded conversations about the way that we want to engage has really helped create new ways or ideas for me to engage with clients and agents. I'm neither especially clever nor especially gifted. I'm only very curious. Albert Einstein. So remove your limiting beliefs, number 5 from the 6 personal perspectives. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Did they speak to it in Quantum Leap at all?
A little bit about what programming do I have? Tell ourselves.
Yes.
That was what are my beliefs? Money, success, love, etc. But what we already see.
So there's a number of different exercises to do one thing that really helps us focus on what really needs to get done. It helps us move away from the fear of what we need to do and really just isolate what needs to get done, but then reapproaching it back to okay, now I've got to get over the belief of whether or not I can do that or work. We have this in a variety of levels of our life, and it's not just business. This happens in relationships, this happens in spirituality, this happens in our future vision for ourselves. It happens in our health constantly, and also in our mental mindset. Limiting beliefs. Right now, what is the #1 limiting belief in the real estate world, in the industry? Bob, you know this one.
That interest rates are too high and I can't afford to make those payments.
That is true. Does that mean that not a single house is going to sell this year?
Nothing. I haven't seen anybody go to escrow. I
Not
didn't go into
single.
escrow on 1.45 on Sunday. I just didn't go in. We didn't. Actually, 2 this week.
2. So when he first said that, that was perfect, actually, and I did not pay him or practice that. But when he first said that,
He's that good, he knows.
well, I would believe, like you, if I'm sitting in my stinking thinking, if I'm sitting in my limited beliefs and you said not a single thing's going into escrow, interest rates are too high, we would all accept that, believe that. Was that the reality? It was not.
It was not.
Thank you for defying reality. One more second, I'm gonna keep you on the spot here.
I'm trying to live in reality, but it was
You did something that I think took me by surprise, and I assume a lot of others, but you ran for a school board position in Escondido.
Mhm.
Why?
Well, the why is twofold. One, I could see that schools in our district were failing. They're failing the kids. And it was very interesting to see the second one. So the why that was always in my heart that I wanted to do it. But something really interesting happened. Our neighbor up the street walked down the hill one day. We've only been over there about a year. She's like, yeah, I'm on the Escondido school board and I've been there 18 years. I don't want to run anymore. She asked my wife, hey, you want to run? She's like, and no, talk to him. And so the opportunity presented itself. So I'm like, let's go. And they gave me a campaign manager and everything. And that is interesting. In this business, you kind of get screwed up in your head a little bit. But like, oh, this one, I was like, I am not freaking losing. I walked to over every day for 3 months, you know, because people only have a limited time frame. Every day I come home from work at 4 o'clock, I walked for 1 to 2 hours, and it was interesting to watch as the time started to get closer to day, you know, the end of the daylight savings. It's like dark at 7, dark at 6:30, dark at 6, dark at 5:30. You know, and I live in a pretty tough neighborhood actually around me. And so I was like, okay, as soon as it's like sunset, I'm out. But the point is, it's like every day 2 hours, weekends 4 hours, regardless. I didn't care how I felt, nothing. I crushed the guy 75% to 25%. But I also had help, you know, and I asked for help. You know, and that's what I'm in my office right now. I'm making calls outbound to people just to get to know them. What's the network? It's ridiculous how many people we all know. It is ridiculous how many people we all know. And it's just like, ask, hey, can I get some help, please? And look, Deanna appears. I asked for help from Deanna.
You heard it, though,
It's not a fist bubble.
is that you removed limiting beliefs. You had the same, it said time right there. I don't have enough time. You found the time, you made the time. And the other thing that I really love about it is that you led with something that you are authentically passionate about. And that's the other thing, is we've got to find that authentic passion. We're not going to have the fuel to get us across the finish line or to achieve what we want to do. So thank you, Bob. And then lastly, be accountable. So this one, life happens, reality shows up. So on the left side, when you don't seek reality, on the right side is seeking reality. Ignorance, ask no question. Awareness, what's the situation? We already touched on that. It's being willing and vulnerable. One topic that I try and instill in my kids so much. And I see it so much. I think social media has kind of influenced us to be nervous about making a mistake. Instagram is the polished life, and everything has to be perfect, and everybody's going on these incredible vacations and doing these awesome things, and nothing goes wrong on social media.
And I posted my bikini picture and went really bad.
But what I really try to instill is the opportunity in the classroom, in this office, in these situations while they're at school. That's where we want to make mistakes. This is where we're not worried about, I don't know what's the right way to do it, but it's just being willing to be vulnerable or be able to make a mistake, because this is where you want to do it. You don't want to do it on the listing presentation. You want to do it in script and role play practice and conversation practice. But how many of you guys have done any kind of script practice, live role play with somebody in the last week? So I started something new when I stepped into the TL role. It's something I have to learn a lot of new scripts. So every single day I have a call with a script partner up in Santa Cruz, or he's in Northridge, North Los Angeles, and we have just a quick 10 minutes of let's practice. And he practices scripts on me, I practice my script with him, and then we're good. But it's always just exciting. The other thing that's kind of developed out of this, and this is something we've already been speaking to, is the vulnerability. He shares the amount of rejection he's gotten. So I can gauge it against somebody else and say, okay, I'm not the only one that had this many hangups. I'm not the only one that had someone hear like the first 3 words in my conversation, I hear the phone click, or they just tell me I'm not interested. But it's the reality of having that opportunity and being vulnerable and taking that chance. So it's awareness. What's the situation? The next one, fight reality, denial. That's not the way it is. That's not how I see it. That's your perception. Versus acknowledges reality, clarity. That is the way it is. I got it. I see it when it's going. This brings up the thought of different types of lead generation for me specifically. And it's really easy to say that I don't think that I'm going to get in touch with a live lead or not be able to capture this, specifically looking at online lead generation. It is something you have to put time into to see the results. And more than likely, it's going to come through a few iterations before it starts producing the results you expect. You have to play in that field before you start to know what the actual timing and speed is. I'm really excited about talking to your team about this because I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, but for everybody, it's the same thing. There's no reason that we aren't going in and spending a couple hours at the beginning of a week or the beginning of a month and just pre-growth programming all our automated lead gen through social media. We still want to engage live, but we just don't do it because we don't expect a result of the reality of that.
No, that's not, they say, oh, you can do this in 30 minutes. After I was listening to a guy with, TK or whatever. Anyway. It sounds good, and I did it. I've done it a couple of times, and I just did it yesterday. And I started freaking out because everything not everything, but the majority of stuff that shows up under lead gen in the KW designs is this way, and they all want them to be squares. And so then you're screwing around trying to get everything to fit without cutting the baby's head off, so to speak, and everything. And then it's worse when you get to the Instagram one. It's like, is it all there or not? The easy part was setting them up. The hard part is getting them to fit in their little parameters, because it's like, well, if they're all squares, then why the hell aren't you just giving me squares? That was my frustration because trying, so I spent like 2 hours instead of 30 minutes trying to get this to work. So they make it sound easy, but by the time I got out of there for the Friday posting, I was like, yeah,
So,
But you learn it and then next time it'll.
yeah, now I know, don't pick anything that's long or pick something where everything's right in the center. So you can crop the top and the bottom off and still get your information in, the KW information in, yada, yada, yada. And it was a little frustrating. You just kind of wanted to,
but that
throw the
frustration
computer out.
is what we need the energy to work through, because regardless of the task, if we're doing something new, we're doing something different, our natural reaction usually is going to be some sort of frustration.
But I knew I was going to get through it. I was, one of those, do this.
But I think
And I did.
part of the reason you had the confidence you were gonna get through it is that you had other people that you had spoken to or you had seen or had influenced you to show that it's possible.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm going to put in the efforts I can achieve what this other person has proven I can do. That's again, standing on the shoulder of the giants. It's agents helping agents. That's our ahas. So just to stay on time, because we're in a little long here. Next one, personal excuses. It's not my job. It was never given, I was never given a chance. It doesn't work here versus finding solutions. What are my options? How can I get what I want? What can I do? And I think that actually kind of speaks to that as well, because you've got to have the motivation to drive you not to give up, and you've got to have the motivation to willingness to ask for help or inspect or train or learn, because everything that you guys start doing that's new is going to be slow. It is going to take time to get ingrained. Before we learn by like the back of our hand, we've got to spend a lot of time looking at it in our hands, right? And then lastly, weights and hopes, resignation. If it was meant to be, it will happen. Time will tell. It's out of our hands versus get on it. Action plans. Let's get started. Time's up. Let's go. This is what I will do. So this is part of an affirmation that I do pretty consistently every single morning. I wake up and I think about the biggest obstacles in the day. I think about what I have over the next hour, what it's going to take for me to go from getting out of bed to the office. And I have a compartmentalized way of looking at this personally as I've developed over time. But I really don't focus too much on work and on that work. The main thing is just finding a leading domino of what I need to achieve to make those steps to get there. And every morning now, it's my son who does not want to go to school. He does not want to go to school, and I'm dealing with an 8-year-old, and it's an opportunity. I could look at it in the vein of weights and hopes versus gets on with it. And what? But see, that's not, that would be a solution if my wife would tolerate it, right? But I can understand and I can kind of see the leading dominoes of that. If he doesn't go to school, then this happens, and this happens. And the reality is, all I need to do is just get him up and get him to eat. The moment that he starts eating something, then everything becomes easier. So I just focus on that next little step of this is what I need to do to make progress. I'm not worried about 9 o'clock. I'm not worried about Ignite starting. I'm just focusing on getting downstairs and heating up some toast and boiling an egg. That's really it. So it's about getting to action. One other quote that I think really applies to this is, and Bree, maybe you can help me with this since you're here. What was the quote around the best, was it the best way to treat or act on anxiety is to get in action against those? Remember that one?
Who said it?
It was at our mega leadership like a year ago. I know, I'm going for a deep cut.
Yeah, I mean, that sounded good.
Going for the San Andreas fault here.
The rate that we're seeing things happen in the market, there's a lot of things to be anxious about, but instead of staring at that closed door, the best remedy for those feelings that are brought up by that is just deciding what you're going to do and doing it. I can sit there and lay in bed and think about all the different things that go wrong for the entirety of the day, but I'm just focusing on what I need to achieve to get to the next hour. And then I'm just focusing on what's the next thing I need to do just to get to the next 30-minute period. And I'm just breaking it down. But that's really what I would want you to think about, is that the best way to get out of like the procrastination that comes from pessimism is just deciding what you're going to do and do it. Because ultimately we have to make peace with the fact that it's just staying stagnant will not do anything for us except for making it growing. But that's about it. So we're going to take a quick break. We're a little behind on the materials, but I will say, can we get back in about 5 minutes at 10:12? Use the restroom, and then we'll get started again.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yes. I'm very new, yes.
Beverly, yeah. Got it.
Are you? Okay, so I would think, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Kind of was from all the just like everybody's jump in and I can see what's live this. It's very close size. Would measure. Yeah.
So much. That happened to me at Little Water, and over time. So we need to see that, all.
Yeah, I think I was exactly. It's something that, yeah. So hopefully. Right. So, yeah.
Oh, it's big, right? Will, your son, and you saying, so he doesn't want to get up and get going in the morning until he eats. You guys tried giving him protein, something right before bed?
No.
Might want to consider that, like some yogurt, any cheese, something that has protein that will kind of stay with him longer. Because one of my daughters, when she was young, we had to do that.
Dr. Weiss should get up in the morning and her blood sugars and stuff, her levels would be so off that she would actually be shaking and off. So it might actually be a physical thing that you might want to add in right at bedtime, a protein.
I would actually be curious because that's the other thing that's really taken over with post-mixed through the last quality season, their addiction. Yeah.
I have a little bit, but then right to it and just if they want something, or even if they don't want something, they can eat protein. We used to have her eat like yogurt or cheese sticks or something.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it's worth trying
Yeah.
if it makes a difference.
Definitely try it. I will try it,
It can't hurt.
but talking about a sweet kind of off with the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You guys ready to get started? You still keep on eating? Nourishing.
Take my job.
Kind of reminds me of it, is that I still feel like we haven't had enough time to really engage, get to know each other at a level that, I really like to. But I look forward to the opportunity of doing it over, the time that we have together over the next few years, or as long as you guys stay into it. Our relationship isn't limited to that. Hey, Kara. But thinking of, I guess I'm gonna call this my peanut gallery, I guess I'm taking your time. But getting to sit and talk to Lydia and actually talking in Anaheim a bit, it's so much different when you actually even have a 10-minute conversation. We were just walking across the floor,
Right.
and you were just sharing just your feelings and thoughts around relationships and things that you're doing. And I'm not going to get into the details, but having that conversation completely changes the relationship. It changes the way that you get to engage. And again, Marseille, we sat down and did a KPA, but having that conversation completely changes the way that I feel that I'm able to communicate with you. I feel like I'm more in line with your sense of humor, your sense of politics to an extent, and also just your general ethics and morals and what you respect and value. And until that's established, the conversation gets really hard, or at least that's the way that I typically reflect on myself, in the way that I've gone through a ton of coaches. But I'm a very, and I think we shared this a little bit, but we like to get to know the person and before we're willing to be open and vulnerable. Yeah. You want to expand on it? Please do.
Well, I think you kind of have to wade into the conversation and you're cautious at first. If you leave with your, the full, if you come out with your personality, right out the gate, you may scare people off. That's kind of how I think of it. And like when you do a little test run and you find out that they share the same kind of sense of humor, or you can relate because you both live in a certain area or you have kids in the same stage. You find those little connections and then you start building, and then you have your friends.
Yeah.
It takes away the fear of finding, like you put something out there and you realize that, oh, that was a grounder. That kind of work. Then you pull back a little.
So, since I have you guys all sitting here, I'm gonna take advantage of it. I went to school for music. I was on a career path to be a concert musician since the age of 15. I took up cello. It was my grandmother's wish, and that's what she really wanted me to do, and I enjoyed it. I played in orchestras all throughout high school and through college. I went to the California Institute of the Arts, which was a small school started by Disney after Fantasia. And the idea was a culmination of the arts. So it was dance, music, theater, animation.
You're gonna dance for us?
Actually, I'm not going down that one. Open myself, not being that vulnerable yet. Stop it, Marcin. But where I'm going with this is that was a different experience, being in front of people, being in front of the stage, being on stage, I'm sorry, and I had horrible stage fright, horrible. But what I found was that if I got to know the audience, when I got to know who was in the audience, I would be more willing, I felt more supported, I got more vulnerable. And it's not vulnerable is the right word, I was just brave or courageous because I wasn't worried about the responses because I felt like I had the trust and care of the audience in front of me. One of my teachers at that time was helping me kind of think about stage fright, philosophy, Sandy Cohen, really saying that. But he talked about comedians, and I've followed comedy ever since my sophomore year in college, because what he compared it to is he saw comedians as the modern day philosophers. Philosophers used to travel from city to city, and they would engage in secret forums, they would just mingle with the people. And then his comparison was the road comic that would go from Tuscaloosa to Darren to wherever, just moving all throughout the country and having a variety of demographics in front of them. They have to engage, they have to do that, and they have to be vulnerable with a new audience at the same time. And that just seems like the definition of care. But what I found is the most successful comedians are the ones that are able to actually build an audience that's vulnerable and authentic as fast as possible. And I don't think that changes for any type of business. This is very much talking to the go-getter. But that's sort of the law of rep. Thank you. I always stumble on that one. I did go to speech impediment class in fifth grade as well. You guys know, it can be a little bit more. But yes, being open to the business that would come your way, but it really requires comedians to build a confident audience. When they would go into, and I've listened to countless interviews, when they would go into a new city, but they saw that their Facebook feedback was, I'm going to be at your show, and they knew that this concentrated audience was there, they felt supported, they felt like family. I can look at it the way that I communicate. In the closed group for SDNI, I feel extremely comfortable. And I can say things out there, I can report videos very quickly. My family has a couple of different groups. We have cooking with family and farming with family. And in those groups, I can say anything. It's very open, and I'm much more natural and authentic in that. And it's so easy to communicate with that group because I'm so comfortable. But when it comes to just a bare post or doing something on TikTok, then comes the paralysis, the perfection, the self-doubt, all the thoughts that come into play that make you think, hey, there shouldn't be this thing, I'm going to upset somebody, maybe it's not coming right, they're not going to get it. That is part of what we have to kind of face and accept. But I think the big part about building a database, and one thing that we don't always connect, is that once you have a database size, once you hit that 201 plus, if you have them in a communal group, social media, email, or some other connection, now you can just be natural. You wake up and you just share your morning. You just share your thoughts like you would be talking to your partner, your friend, or your family. So that's one of those things that we really think about. And again, this is the aha section, but that's really the aha that's coming to mind out of this conversation, this understanding that the value of building a database just streamlines everything. That's the leading domino, because if you can openly communicate with a group of 201 people, your business will grow beyond your current expectations and grow away. So that being said, any other ahas? Again, this is agents helping agents. That's a big key theme of what we're talking about today, what we're taking from Family Reunion. But do you have anything else that's come up before we move on to the next section?
Like you said, about being comfortable in front of people. I have a really hard time getting to the point like, Lydia, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to make a video. And I watch these guys that I'll say this, And it's like, I want it to be perfect because that's the type of personality I have. And I can't be perfect on that, but I have more than 3,300 kids with me and my damn job. I mean, it's like, you've got to be joking. And I was just screwing around and they were playing and I said, and this is what we have to do for mommy to be able to work. Is that, you know, they took paper up, we did do tennis balls. And I'm like, well, I can get those jobs and act, you know?
And who hasn't heard the statistic about more text messages are read when there are mistakes?
Like, what?
When there's a mistake.
Oh, and there's a mistake. Okay.
When people see imperfection, they believe that you're real. And we're coming out of an age of perfection. We're coming out of the age of the guru. I think the current generations, I think the current zeitgeist is shifting with the market as we go into a recession. You do see this kind of social change in America especially. So the opportunity to be authentic is huge. I wish you would speak more about what you do.
I was wondering why am I so successful?
Yes. I think it's, again, the other part is then the size audience that you're in front of, because, not gonna spill, again, too many secrets, but I had a meeting with Misha last week, and a big push that we need to do is make sure that he's getting in front of a larger audience. Because you are genuine, you are knowledgeable. It's just that the amount of people that will conduct real estate has shrunk. You understand that, right? So if we had a database or we had influence and we would get in front of 300 people last year, the percentage of those people that are actually going to be conducting real estate has gone down. That's just a fact. That's the reality that we're acknowledging. That's part of the 6% truth. That's what you're talking about. But the part that we have to change is just expanding that to 600 people now. So that, I think, is the key. That's what's driving me in the business plan that we're building together, is making sure that you still have the trust and respect of all your SOI and your clients and a majority of Santa. The issue is that you're only getting in front of about 20% of Santa, and we need to get you in front of at least 60%, keep you on track to your goals, keep you smart. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? And that applies to all of us. It's not just Misha, but that's the kind of thought that we have to understand. One of the opportunities, the reason we pay so much to live in San Diego is the sheer number of people there. That's how metropolises work, right? You have a marketing advantage by being local, being in front of this many people. If you were in Spokane, the population density is much, much smaller. So you would have to compete at a different level to stay there. The opportunity of San Diego is just getting in front of the mass of our population. That's why there's so many people in New York. That's why there's so many people in Los Angeles, is that that's the model they're driving to market. So are there any other before we move on?
I had an idea, so my mentor's David Anderson, and I had an idea with him that I shared with him, and honestly, like, I don't like sharing my ideas because I don't like to like jinx it or whatever, but for whatever reason, I felt like I could just share with him, and I think because of like my self-doubt, kind of like we were talking about the last session, the negative self-talk and the self-doubt, it kind of like stunted me from actually taking any action. And then after talking with him, he like gave us advice and just told me to go for it, a little bit of courage, like I was able to like take the steps and then follow through with it. And now I have even more confidence because I'm doing it and I'm seeing results. I have even more confidence, you know what I'm saying, to keep going and that I can pull it together.
Yeah. So I can. Go ahead. Yes.
And small successes, makes propel you to be more courageous.
Yeah, it gives me more confidence.
So Chris Nofia is a great person to talk to about various books, and I've read a lot of books with him, and you find reoccurring themes. Small successes, the roller coaster effect. First day at school, going out on a date. But it all compiles down to, in order to be good at anything, you have to be willing to be bad at it first. confidence isn't something that you can acquire just overnight. It's not the matrix. You can't download it. Confidence comes from consistently getting an expected outcome. And how can you get an expected outcome until you practice that? Again, one thing, time on task. It's a massive study the KW has done numerous times, and multiple people have wasted so much money just realizing the same thing. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, Outliers, that really covered this. But it just comes down to the fact that those that are willing to do it and do it consistently, running up that hill. I don't know that song that well. Someone got the reference. Who's watched Stranger Things? But the point being is that we have to consistently do something and start getting repeatable outcomes before we're going to feel confident about it. It doesn't happen the other way around. Everybody expects that. I want that. It would be great to get that confidence out the door. But it's not something that you can't get. You have to earn it. Okay, so let's keep on going through. We're going to go a little bit faster. On track with our materials. So now we're on your career vision. So in order to have a big life, you've got to have big goals. And you do want to take into account the various things you're going to be putting money towards. So here's donate cat habitat, $50,000, get through school debt free, $120,000, pay off mortgage, $18,000. That's the one that didn't go through mom and dad's. Maybe it's just the last part. That's just low for a mortgage. And then you have your other two, but really, this is part of the quantum leap approach. This is part of understanding in order to be motivated to do these things, we have to have our entire life tied together. If I hit my economic goal here at the office, that really means nothing. Because the reality is I have economic goals for my children, I have retirement goals, as well as taking into account you have health goals as well. It's one thing to make a bunch of money, but it's another thing to actually survive long enough to spend it. And that's something that we have to take into account. And then the last part is the spiritual aspect to it, or whatever you may call it. I've been raised around a lot of faiths. My family's split down the middle, Christian and Jewish. So I celebrate both I have Hanukkah and Christmas, and then I've just been kind of in this mix. I've never really applied myself to one or the other faiths really dedicatedly. I just have a sense of a spiritualism with them. I sit with them through the holidays, and I can respect that sense of connectivity. That's something that you have to have some sort of peace. It's my belief that you have to have some sort of peace with in order to be whole. The other one is physical health. I'm coming off of the most sugar and fat induced holiday season that I've ever experienced. When we came out of COVID, it seemed like everybody went crazy. DJ sent a box of cookies last Friday. Did you guys see that thing? No. Just like, it was too much, but yes, crumbles, yes. There's a rise of cookie stores coming out in San Marcos.
There is a huge cupcake base now.
But one thing that I have to be serious about is being accountable to my dietary habits. We were just talking about this. Me and my kids have been eating far too much sugar in the evenings. And I think it probably has had an impact on our morning routine. It certainly has on mine. So if I don't accept it, accountable to it, and really start making a change to it, I'm not going to be at the top of my game, right? And this market, this industry, my goals as far as what I want to achieve, they deserve me to be into that shape. And I'm going to feel confident getting there with that. So to achieve success, you need motivation and inspiration for doing it. Your big why, where your commission dollars go to. So the other agent, your market center, business expenses, taxes, and your take home. So the reality is we've got to think about margins in our business. So we're going to shift a little bit to talk about numbers for a moment here and really keep this in focus. Remember, this is the first session of Ignite. So we're trying to make sure that we have a solid foundation of where we're moving to. But one thing that every entrepreneur, every business owner has a hard time accepting is the cost of doing business. If it was just revenue, that would be great. I can't tell you how incredible it would be if it was just revenue. But you've got to imagine taxes, cost of sale, cost of sustaining the business, also putting money away for, a reserve fund, a rainy day, or whatever you may call it. Those are all things that successful businesses do. It may seem like, based on this image, that you're getting just the short end of the stick, but we have to acknowledge that this is every business's model. And the one thing that's actually rather unique is in real estate, you actually have a higher profit margin than just about every other business out there. Your liabilities as agents are crazy. As you know, I've been an investor in market centers and have dealt with that liability for years now. You know that the overall brokerage profit margin is closer to 3%. You get just about 90% of the insurance liability, the risk, the E&O, all that comes back to the brokerage and comes back to the customer. As an agent, you alleviate all of that by working under the brokerage. You don't have to worry about it. We're accountable to the deductibles and the insurance. There is a policy with the agents to be partially covering some of that, but the larger risk, for example, an agent can jump house and just move to another brokerage if something goes wrong. Brokerage is still on the line. Ty Stewart, our broker, was phenomenal. You guys haven't had time to talk to him, but it's his license on the line. If any one of the agents in the market center decide to do something egregious and crazy, they have some risks and they have some liabilities, but Ty ultimately is taking responsibility. That's what that relationship is in a broker. In the agent side, though, it's closer to a 30 to 40% margin. That is an incredible tenfold increase from working in the brokerage model. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. But oftentimes, I don't know how to say this politely. This is that part of the commitment that agents rarely really want to take. Sit down and understand their opportunity, acknowledge the numbers, and realize that I am going to be spending about 60% of my revenue to rebuild my business, or to reinvest into these activities, or to farm, to take new steps. Dan Anderson is speaking to this directly because he's been at this wall for the past year, willing to take that risk, knowing that these are things, in order to make that E2P moment, I've got to invest back in my business at a level that is going to be a little uncomfortable. Loss aversion. Does anybody know loss aversion? The natural human aspect to our psychology, where we're twice as more willing to keep what we have than to invest to make gains beyond what we're currently making. That's something that's grounded in me, another anchored thought of loss aversion, something that we have to acknowledge and understand in the way that we naturally approach objections or opportunities in our entrepreneurial thought, is really being willing that it's going to feel like it's twice as hard to do these things to make gains, but that's what's necessary. And that's why half the industry is not going to move forward through this shift. That's why either going to stay stagnant or fall behind, because only half of the agents in the country, your competition, only half of the agents are even willing to consider working a little bit harder. And that's what you're hearing from every single speaker, not just KW, every single speaker is understanding that we're going to have to run up that hill. So the example income goal, say you've got $100,000 net income goal that you want to take. You have company dollar royalty cap at 30,000, business expenses at 50, which would equal a total gross commission at 180,000. So this is a very quick look at an economic model from the MREA. But what this is just doing is following the next piece of logic. What I just described may sound difficult, and I'm trying to really stress loss aversion is something real that we have to face. We need accountability, we need optimism, we need to be wise to overtake that. But it is this simple. Another bold law. Success is easy, but it ain't simple. Wait, got the other way around. Success is simple, but it's hard. Success is hard, but it is simple. So the whole point is what this question down, excuse me, is if you want to net 100,000, you got to take into account the expenses it's going to take to get there, 30,000, 50,000. Granted, those numbers are a little inflated based off of our local caps and our local price points. Then you look at what your average commission is, which is in San Diego County, the average commission right now is closer to $20,000, not $9,000. And that means that you have to have 20 transactions to get there at the 9,000 rate, but at $20,000 average commission, that would cut that number in half. Just rough numbers, you're talking about 10 closed transactions to make $200,000 in GCI. Then we just go backwards in our math and think about, well, if I need to close 20 transactions, how many appointments do I need to go on? And being willing to be honest with that, we understand our conversion rates. We know that fewer transactions are closing at this point. There's a higher cancellation rate, is what I'm getting at. So that means you probably need to go on and slow me down if I'm going too quick. But the NAR numbers are 50% of the time, a client will sign with the first agent they meet. So if you're using just the national averages, 50%, in order to get to 20 transactions or 10 transactions, right? You would just double it. Then you'd also take into account the transactions don't close. So I would add roughly 20 to 30% based off of your experience and what you feel your conversion and close ratio is. So now we're looking at maybe 25 people that need to be under contract with you. In order to get to there, it's a question, I'm sorry, we're talking about appointments. 25 appointments you need to go on to then get them under contract to close. And then the last question is, and this is the hardest part, this is where we spend a lot of time conversating, this is what we mastermind groups, is what is the lead gen activity that I need to consistently do? What's my time on task that I'm going to do every single day, or what can I commit to get me to that number of appointments? So that's where it gets really uncomfortable. We can move to the next slide, which is just filling in your gaps. So I will ask you as we're talking, if you haven't done this already, to try and break down your number here. But take your income goal. You want to factor in expenses. I don't think anybody in this room's cost of sale would be beyond $30,000. If you're on a team, you do have to do a little bit more complicated math because you may have a constant split to your rainmaker. So in that instance, you might multiply that by a factor of that rate. It's again, if you have like a 25% split to a rainmaker that you work underneath of, then you would just divide that by 0.75 to get your number. So we can sit down and do these all individually, and that's my commitment to you. Just reach out to me and we'll sit down and have this conversation in detail. But first, take your income goal, and let's say it's 200,000, because let's be honest, San Diego's extremely expensive to live. You can factor in roughly $30,000 for cost of sale on average. And at the $200,000 range, we're going to add another 30% towards your expenses to keep your business going. So it's about $60,000. So if we add that all together, we're just at $290,000. If we divide that by 20, and again, I'm going to do rough math, that's roughly 15 transactions rounding up, being conservative. So in order to bring in $200,000 net, you need to go out and close 15 transactions. If we're going to add in a little bit of buffer for cancellation rate, that means that we're probably going to add, let's say 4 to 5 transactions to go up to 20. So we need to be 20 people under contract. I'm being very conservative in the numbers, but the reality is it gets really simple after that. Knowing that you've kind of hedged your bet in your expectations and going up to 20 under contract, that means you just need to go on 40 appointments. And in order to go on 40 appointments, that's the number that every individual agent has to really inquisitively study themselves. Because there's no easy way to know other than your own results. Who's ever heard that, Olympic athletes don't compare themselves to others, they only compare themselves to themselves. They look at their personal progress. And that's very true across every industry where you're getting competitive. You have to look at what you're able to do. Everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different network. Everybody has a different SOI. Just to speak to Misha a little bit right now. The uniqueness of it is I think my goal for Misha is closer to about 30 transactions. And in order for him to get to those 30 transactions, he needs to go on roughly 70 appointments. In order to get 70 appointments, I believe one of the best opportunities that Misha has is his existing presence in Tier Santa and his long career of just rapport and being in front of them, the influence in what you have there. So the goal for him is going to be different because he has that equity in his current business. So the focus is going to be a little bit different in the activities we do to get to those appointments. For someone that may have an interesting social media following that we didn't talk about in detail, it would be a completely different strategy. We're just trying to use the position that we're in. For me, when I look at real estate sales and trying to garner referrals based on what works in my life and the equity I have in my network, my SOI, is largely through my farming and cooking with family Facebook groups and getting referrals from them. I don't have a huge referral goal for real estate because I'm more focused on recruiting agents. But again, that is, the smartest path forward for me. So each one of us at that stage, once you have an appointment goal, need to then go and say, how can I intelligently close this gap? What is the best way to sit down and have this many appointments with these people? And what windows are already open in my world? Does that make sense? Any ahas? Thoughts?
Yes, thoughts. Misha, if you're doing 70 appointments and agents tag along to observe you on these appointments,
No, that's for the next year, so this year I'm going to be 17, next year. So he said that it's gonna be my goal for the few months. He wants me to sell 40 homes and I'm thinking like.
40? No, I like it.
but I would love to tag along to with an experienced agent when you're going on like listing appointments and just to observe and just to learn.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to be a fly on the wall and just sit there and pretend like we know what we're doing.
Well, yeah, I have one person to go. But
So I love Kelly. And I get to put you on the spot now since you opened your mouth.
No, go ahead. I don't mind.
So if Misha doesn't go on an appointment in the next week, what other opportunities could you find to shadow?
Just ask other agents.
And that's really coming back to what we talked about in the first hour, is just being willing to ask other agents for their help or their experience. I think some agents might be a little guarded about letting people come along on an appointment with them.
Sure.
But I do know a tremendous amount of agents would be happy to have you shadow them or partner with them at different agent activities, open houses and door
I've been
knocking.
here for 10 years. One of the reasons why I'm staying here, it just means psychologically, but when I came here, I go to San Rasul because he was a big here in Colonel Mountain, and he's not working here. So I asked him, "What? Tell me about your marketing." He's like, "Okay, call Michelle, tell her that I told her to give you everything that I have. Just don't share it with other agents." Like, whoa! There was not a single time that I talked to any other agent who said, "No, I'm sure you or so or so. I'm too busy, blah, blah, blah." Didn't you know that it's rushing you off? In this office, I mean, not a single agent that I possibly talked to. Everybody was not. That's how we look at it. Differentiates the culture. The other one is,
I agree.
it's like, we're not really in competition, we're not competing. And even like, and here was like a presentation. And, like, well, it's like, so they, people say like, "How come you're like so open to them?" It's like, well, I know that only 2 of you out of 40 will do it. So, you know, only 5% of people here will implement, will stop. I mean, that's the numbers.
Yeah.
So,
But the funny,
Not to rush you along, but, I one of business equipment. So, are we gonna have homework or something that we need to talk about?
so homework would be to work through the economic model and make sure that you have an idea of the number of appointments you want to hit through the year. The other one that I would really put on your plate is just making sure that we're engaged with our database. So if, let's just, we'll get into this back, I'll take that with a second,
sorry.
right? So who here actually actively has a database working for them?
What do you mean by working?
Okay. No, that's great. So one of the issues that we talked about with agents is actually having a database and not considering your phone or spreadsheet. You need to be actively using a CRM, and I'm going to really encourage you guys to take it into command because it's something that every single one of you already have. It's a CRM that is more valuable than just about every other CRM out there right now. There's a long backstory that I'll love to debate a lot, but the point is, who here has the database? Okay, I think Dominic's response, I felt that. So first step is starting with that, making sure that you have a database and a place to put it in, or a way to put people in it, and you know how to do it. Get over the technological intimidation and go through one of the many courses. The $100 pipeline 2-day course is free. The next one's coming up at the end of this week. That is the first place to start. So you have an understanding of how to utilize the technology.
And they cover a lot of information, so don't feel ashamed to take it more than once.
Yes. Numerous agents have taken it
Yep.
numerous times. Yeah.
What days?
So that would be the first big step to make sure that's happening. So economic model, you need to have your goals laid out. And the economic model in my mind is not just thinking through how many transactions I need to make this kind of money. It's really taking to heart how much money do I need to live the life that's going to be exciting, that's going to motivate me, it's going to achieve my goals, getting on track to where I want to go. That's part of the economic model, and that is doing that. And don't be shy about it. One of the exercises that you going through goals is you have you write a letter to your future self. And later in this presentation, cut it to the chase with Susan here, is we sit down and say, March 6th, 2024. I've achieved the goals that I've outlined through going through the night. And this is what it feels like. This is what it means to me. To me, that's about $650,000. What that means is that I'm on track for my children's college fund. I'm on track for my family's retirement fund. I'm on track for where I need to be in line with this current market to be financially solvable. I'm able to lend money to friends. I'm able to help people I want. I'm able to give various charitable contributions and do those things. I get really into depth with that, but those are all the little facets that need to be kind of lined up in order to have an anchored big why that's going to give you the motivation to go through that. So in order to do that, we have to have the economic model done and have an idea of how many appointments we can go on and start thinking about what our lead gen's going to look like. That is going to require technology to do it cost effectively. There's not a single agent that is going to be profitable this year that is not leveraging technology to a higher level than they have ever before. There's not a single agent in the industry that is going to be profitable without leveraging technology. It's the truth, the truth, the truth. KW's been screaming it since 2015, and every other company has sort of gone back and forth the issue, but if you're paying attention to Inman News right now, Remax, Coldwell, Berkshire, all just made that new price. There's a big difference too, and this is a conversation we start having more often, is that you'll notice that Remax, Coldwell, and Berkshire are focused on agent support, agent activity, agent technology. They're not focused on agent recruiting. They're not focused on recruiting agents to recruit more agents. There's two companies right now that solely focus on that. And if you look at the product of the agents working for those brokerages, their businesses are down by 30% or more. One agent that left our office back in June is down 40%, and that equates to $400,000 in GCI. I don't care how much rev share that person's taking things. So, getting back to it, the technology is going to be the huge thing. Once you have your economic model and the appointments lined up, the next homework assignment is going to make sure that you're making a commit to the technology. We will have all sorts of level support. There's tons of trainings that you can do, as well as Jess is here as our market center tech trainer to help facilitate any other questions you have. And we're just bringing in more and more support. Scott Roy Marketing is something that we've pulled in, and they're doing all these agent onboarding. Janine's already gone through it.
Well, no, I've just been on command, going down a rabbit hole, getting really familiarized with all that. With all the stuff they have to offer stuff.
Yeah.
Just finding is that you were that I want to get into the stuff that's not impossible to learn. It's just time consuming.
Yes.
And so for me to actually say to myself, you need to give yourself at least 3 hours a day to learn this stuff. And then that is a little something on my hands. So it's a process that takes time, but you have to put the time to it. And that's kind of where I am right now. Even though I'm a little more successful, but it's because I'm putting a lot of time into education, like every day. And that's the only thing that I'm learning is that it's very learnable.
Yes.
But that's how you go in your business, you have to have that to be successful in the business. Besides the other stuff.
That's overcoming loss aversion. That's acknowledging that you have to work a little bit more upfront to get a bigger return on the end. It's the same basic theory of all investing, is that it's not fun to take $5,000 and put it into some sort of passive investment of some sort. There's a variety. Obviously, in this world, we're going to talk about buying and holding real estate and cash flowing with properties. But the reality is, you say you're going to be a first-time home investor. You go out, you're going to have to buy in California a home that's somewhere between $500,000 to $600,000. If you don't have the capital to do that, then you're going to be paying 2 mortgages at the same time, and you're going to be waiting for quite a while until essentially prices pick back up, rent starts to compete with that, and you start seeing a cash return on that. But then once you get to that level, you start seeing mailbox money. One of the things when it comes to just first-time home buyers, and it's the bigger conversations when we have talked about mortgages, is that, and then I'll be transparent. I bought my home in 2016. We got a condo that we owned into a home. That home is a 3-bedroom, 17,000 square foot home, front and backyard, garage. 17,000. 1,700. Sorry. Did you catch that, Bree? Thank you. I have number dyslexia. What I'm trying to say is that that home now is less on a monthly mortgage payment than it is for a single bedroom. That is the payoff. Now, at the time getting into that home, I had to pinch pennies, I had to squeeze, I had to make it work, but then over time I got that return. The same thing is going to happen over and over again, multiple ways. This is the E to P. This is part of the commitment to mastery that we talked about in 6 different perspectives. The same thing applies to the way that you invest in learning technology. The way that you're able to cross somebody at the grocery store, turn to the side, voice to text in their name, the email address or phone number, and then apply a smartphone. And now they've already gotten a text from you, they're getting a monthly neighborhood nurture, and you're getting a reminder to stay in touch with them every couple weeks, or depending on where they're at in the cycle of if you're playing on 8x8 or 12-month nurture. I love my Aunt Lolly. I adore her, but I forget to call her constantly. So until I started putting my family in the CRM, I didn't acknowledge when I wasn't making this call. It's really easy for us to fall into that human behavior. Okay. So daily success systems. This is setting those daily goals. This is in line with ideas of getting into the training as well. This is just a very basic template, but this is something that I want you to take on going through Ignite. Is 10 conversations, and you just mark this off. I use something very similar to call this. It's called Win the Week. And the expectation is it's just check boxes. I've got to make this many contacts a day. And once I check that off, I'm satisfied, and then I can be glad that I hit the goal.
Win the week, is that an app?
No, it's something that DJ
Okay.
passed on to me, and essentially it looks just like this, except for it has 10 checkboxes, actually 40 checkboxes. But the thing that once you have your economic exercise done and you know how many appointments you need to go on and you're measuring your lead generation, then you can just say, how many of this do I need to do before I can feel confident and just set it for that? It's much easier to know that I'm on my fitness goals if I go on 4 runs a week. I'm not counting calories. I'm not doing Jenny Craig. I'm not worried about what I'm eating, although I know I should. But the point being is that's the goal. It's something that is smart. It's measurable. You know, the SMART goal acronym. So this gives you a way to hold yourself accountable and then lose the stress about everything else, because that stress is what occupies us. That's what kind of takes over us. If you guys have read around like the stress of money, it's really easy to obsess or get blown up by about any bill or number you see. But if you do your planning at once and just have confidence in where you're going by measuring the results and just saying, I don't need to worry about that headline I saw. I don't need to worry about that notification. No, I just know that I need to do this. I need to make 10 contacts today. This one is really interesting to think about though, because you see that number of 10 conversations. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but that is a hard number to hit. 10 conversations is extremely difficult. The first owner that I worked under, operating partner at this market center, was Richard Joy, and he worked with his wife. They've been in the business for 2 decades before they retired in about 2018. But the sentiment that he consistently said was, oh my gosh, I wish I was building a database from day one, because that would have made these conversations so much easier. That's why we talk about the 201 plus, because that would make this conversation so much easier. Because once you get to that critical mass that matches your need and lead generation, which 201 really sates the appetite of the majority of goals that everybody has been setting. 201 should bring you in over 200,000 in GCI. But once you have those people that will take your calls consistently, now you're not going out there and having to work as hard to add a database. You've just got a mass of people that you can consistently follow through every single quarter or talk to them once a month, and it's still comfortable. Because with a database of 10 or 20, that's where we're feeling pain, right? I've already called the 10 people I know today. I can't call them again tomorrow and every single day for the next 30 days.
You could
You could.
drive them crazy and say, look, I have to talk to 10 people every day. So if you want me to quit calling you, then you need to give me a name to call.
That's bold.
Say it.
I have one of my favorite team leaders in the region that I've got to work with, Ray Frazier. He's got that type of personality. And this is where it comes back to really understanding ourselves and the way that we engage in our advantages, disadvantages. That type of script would not work for me. I don't think.
Good luck, Sarah.
So we're at time. So are we good to go about 10 more minutes? Is that all right? Thank you. So you have to take stock in the way that you can engage with people. For me, like I can do more regular conversations that are around whimsy, and I can engage with someone daily about jokes and humor, and that's just my natural style. I can't demand that they give me somebody to call, so I stop calling them. But I can jokingly say, I'm out of people to call today. Do you have anybody that I can reach out to? So just kind of make it more personal, authentic, because that's what, if you have 201 authentic relationships in your CRM, you have the opportunity to have countless conversations and just feel the communal support of that kind of engagement. Do not call us. Does everybody know what this is? TCPA?
Get to find who's not on the, who's on, do not call. Quick,
So-
to that, if nobody says how to find.
So you can go to the National Do Not Call list and you can register and create your own account. Office has an account as well. You can tap into, it's at no cost. But what you typically do is you run spreadsheets against it. So you can enter in a CSV of just a list of numbers. It will tell you, these are all the numbers you should call. The other thing is if you're using a call aggregator like RedX or Mojo Dialer, they will also cross-reference those for you and just automatically do it. Call directory as well. All of them are tied into that. So again, if you have more questions about those call lists and how to screen against it, please reach out, let me know, and we'll have a direct conversation so I can get into the specifics.
And title, right?
Yes, title as well. They will mark it against do not call. But then we also have to understand the details of the way that we can interact. Anybody that's giving you their information willingly, that doesn't apply. They've opted in, they've accepted it. And there's a lot of detail to that. We'll talk to that more in future trainings. But I would then refer back to the KW codebook that, again, we have QR codes around the office look like this. And you can download the code book. There's a variety of different lead gen playbooks and then the code book. And the code book speaks directly to how to text people, whether you've met them in person or not. If they came off of a download, how to call people as well. So powerful conversations, get results, lead generate, uncover motivation, identify objections, skills, make determined. Confidence. I think we don't have to dive too much into that unless anybody has any questions, but just understanding that I think this just comes back to what we've been grounding the idea of authenticity. Having honest conversations and really inquisitive of our clients, making sure that they have the motivation to close the transaction that we're investing our time in. So this is a great slide just to take into account and coming back to the tool and idea is once you get to that level, again, building up a database you can consistently communicate through, and then just staying in touch because you need to be in touch with people as they're on the way to move, right? This is predictive analytics is always trying to solve this, but the reality, the industry's found, what you found in the way that Google and Apple has changed their algorithms is that the best way to stay in touch with clients is actual personal relationships. So utilizing the CRM with the mass of people that you need to hit your goals and then staying in our communication with the system. And then, okay, we're almost done. So the last one here is the Ford method. So has anybody heard about the Ford method? You talked about this. KW really wants you to understand the power of just having systems to follow as you go through things. And oftentimes we might find ourselves a little tongue-tied or just not sure where to go in the conversation. The Ford method is something that I think originally came from Carnegie's book, How to Make Friends and something. That's it. But you just have a really quick acronym: family, relationships, occupation, and dreams, right? Family, occupation, recreation, I got backwards, so broad. But just when you're having a conversation with somebody, this is a way just to understand this is what genuine conversations really are. Is you can have a conversation about their family, talking about what's going on with it, have something you connect with, something to do with occupation. And you might find your conversations largely already are in this area. This is just something to fall back on if you're in a situation where I don't know what to say. The other thing that I would really encourage you to do though is have this conversation for yourself. So if someone walked up to you and said, tell me about your family, you actually have thought about your family and know where they're at. We were talking about my son, doesn't want to wake up. My daughter, she wants to be 16 already and she's 11. So those are the things that come to mind. Occupation, I can talk about the real estate market and the way that we're seeing things change, and really that leads into a tech conversation with me and my mind. That's kind of the rehearsed conversation that's there. When it comes to recreation, Got two big things that are happening this year. My family is doing a all grandkids Hawaii trip. And then we do something called FVC, Family Vacation Camp. And I could talk your ears off about that. Incredible experience.
Tell us about it. Wait, summary.
So FVC, the University of Santa Barbara, have you ever been to that campus? I'd never been until last year. Yeah, they're on the coast and their dorms are beachfront. And what they do is they bring in all these peer counselors for kids and they kind of just run the show for a full week. So you wake up and the kids can go to the dining hall and they have a college experience. They get all this independence and there's just tons of supervision. Then they go into day camps and they do all these activities, great things for parents that hang out.
Well,
I
that's
wonder
like.
your daughter wants to be 16.
Like
What?
over a year, there's a kid-
They have kids as young as infants, all the way up to teenagers.
Wow.
So any age group can go. You have like a whole week, essentially. One of the instances, I had a little bit of a work emergency during that, so I had to step out for the day, but the big kids kept on going with their family. The kids, they took class, and they loved it, because then you would get together in the evenings, and you'd have dinner, and again, kids in a college, environment is just awesome. They love it. And then again, that campus is, I was mind blown that that's a UC campus. I can't believe they're on the coast. It's just nuts. And then dreams are kind of what I shared with you guys a little bit, is that I know exactly where my economic goals are and I know where I want to be. Personally, my focus is to get to about $10 million in assets, and then I can just again, I don't think I'm the type of person to ever really stop working. I think that I want to be engaged, but I feel like that $10 million number outlines in detail every little sense of security that I need to get through it. It covers the children's college, it helps them get to their first homes, it covers the weddings or marriage, if they choose to get married, it covers my retirement, and it also leaves me the room to help out if I have big family issues, but I have a very large family. And one example is I just spent about $500 fixing up a car to give to a friend because they don't have it. So that type of ability is something that I want to have in plans, because once I achieve all those things, then I feel like I can truly just be 100%, like 100% charitable. I wouldn't have any personal gain. And that type of altruism really connects with who I am. That's where I derive my biggest satisfaction. It's not about the number, it's about what I'm able to do and give back. And I'm just working to a level where I can get back at a level that gets beyond my expectations. So that's about it. We have a couple other slides to talk about ahas, achievements. We already talked through the homework. But again, I would really stress getting into command, getting into a database, having those pieces together, making sure that you have the education put together to make sure that you're time blocking time to study and learn it so you can utilize it. That has been crucial moving forward. So that's what I will leave you guys with. Any questions before we wrap up? No? So did you guys enjoy your time today? Thank you so much. And then we'll see you back here tomorrow.